I grew up with some cops kids. Cops kids aren't always the moral compasses that you want to follow. Was that you?
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
When a career path comes across your radar, it's common to see the end result. What is rarely viewed is the hard work that it takes to get to the finish line. Those that fail may be unwilling to go through the difficulties to get to where they want to be. You become immersed in your profession, especially when you feel the joy of the true meaning of your job. Each day trying to become just a little better, navigating the peaks and valleys, trying to level off. Everything comes to an end, and one day it's all over. You're left out into the wilderness with no waypoints and no compass. You have to figure out what's next and what to draw purpose from. That's a reasonable facsimile to what is gone. I'm Kevin Donaldson here with Mike Failace, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming adversity and overcoming suffering, then we're for you, because that's what we do, and that's the stories we highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please comment. Don't forget to ring the bell so you can get notified of all of our new content, and follow us on all social media so that way you can find out exactly what we're doing. And on this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we welcome a person who I've spoken to quite a bit. That's Tom Smith, to discuss the suffering of gold shields. Tom had a 30-year career in the NYPD and survived it all. And then when he left, he was left out in the open.
Thank God he survived it. He's sitting here.
Did he survive it? I don't know. So let's welcome Tom Smith to the show. Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor.
And, you know, you've been very generous to us, throwing shout-outs on your show. And listen, I'm all about cross-promotion.
Absolutely.
You know,
he's got the Blue Line Beer Company shirt on. I thought maybe he'd bring us some.
I don't have any more room left for T-shirts right now. So
No, I mean the beer.
Oh, the beer.
You can take the T-shirt. I'll take the beer.
Yeah.
We don't have either. This is it.
Well, that's the way it always works. When somebody brings something in, they'll bring in like we had Mary Sharon from Carlo's Bakery in Hoboken. She brings in all these cakes. I'm gluten free. I can't eat it. It looks so good.
They were good. I couldn't eat it, so I capitalized on that one.
He goes in the room afterwards with our producer, and he says, "You know, Kevin can't eat any of this, right? So this is ours."
Someone's got to eat.
We had cannolis. We had everything. Oh, man, that was good.
Let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as police, but we do trust them. So go to ToyotaHackensack.com. Let them find you a car. They're good guys over there. I just spoke with one of the general sales manager today, and listen, they're doing right by us. We better be doing right by them.
You looking for a new car?
We'll be up for new soon, real soon.
So my father after he crashes it again.
So, Tom, each week we take a question from our audience. Our social media question this week comes from Stasia_LOL. Says, this is a loaded question. I got to be honest with you. This is a tough question. Says, what was your darkest day of your professional life? As a cop, it's not just day, it's days.
Yeah,
what do you think it is?
There's a few I'd have to choose from, but I would say back early in my career, one of my best friends and Sergeant Jimmy McNamara committed suicide over an illness that he had, and that hurt. Mac was my boss from the time I was a rookie. He chose me to be on his squad when we got out of kind of our training 6-month regiment and went into steady 4 to 12s. He picked me up. He was a close friend of mine. He was at my wedding. He was at christenings, all that stuff, and tragically took his life, which hurt a lot, you know, and it took a long time to get past having another sergeant to run the squad and run the anti-crime unit other than him, not hearing him on the radio. It took a while. It took a long time to get rid of. And
there's different personalities and everything else too. You know, you got to get used to the new boss and.
Yep. And Mac was unique. You know, he was a sergeant, but he was a cop that just happened to be a sergeant.
Yeah.
And he was a salt of the earth, cared about cops more than anyone I still to this day ever met.
You know, I always say that's the best supervisors is the guys that are still cops.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and like I said, when I started making it through the ranks, I wasn't a go do this guy, go do that. Let's go do this. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm going to be right behind you.
Then those are always
if we're kicking in the door, I'm kicking it in with you.
Right. Those are always the best sergeants, the best ones.
Mike, what do you think?
You know, I mean, I had a bunch of them, but you know, Tom brought it up before 9/11. You know, that like I said, I'll never forget. I was working off duty. I was working 3 to 11 that day. I was working off duty detail in the morning, and it was right down the Meadows, you know, New Jersey Meadowlands, and it overlooks the skyline. So I'm sitting there, and it was a bullshit detail where we had to check trucks going into a baler facility, bringing garbage in and whatnot. And I had my portable radio with me, and a guy says, one of the guys from my department says, I'm going to be doing traffic up on the one main road that overlooks the skyline. He said, there's a lot of traffic up here. He goes, I don't know if you heard a plane hit the World Trade Center. Turn around, look over my shoulder, and I could see smoke coming out of the World Trade Center. So we had a TV there, so I put TV on, I put the news channels on, they're talking about it and everything. So I turn around, and I'm just looking at it. I mean, listen, we're 10 miles away, so the World Trade Center was that big, but I could see the other plane hit the second tower. I called the guy that was running the job. I said, listen, I'm out of here. I got to go. I got to go into work. So I went home, put my uniform on, went into work. Chief gave us all cars, and we went to different hospitals to pick up doctors, and we had to drop them off at Giant Stadium parking lot. So we go to a hospital, pick up a couple doctors, in a marked unit, drop them off. After the first time we dropped someone off, they said, I don't know if there's a need for more doctors. He said, I'm not finding too many bodies. And it was just like, oh.
It's a crime scene, not a recovery.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. There's so many dark days that create this domino effect. Like, and they all affected me different ways, from dead children to suicides to I don't like killing animals. I can tell you right now how much I had to kill a baby fawn that got whacked by a car. And the freaking thing just stopped right before I'm about to pull the trigger, look straight at me. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but when you've had so much over time, that stuff affects you more and more as time moves on. But I'd have to say my darkest day is the day, and it wasn't even while I was still employed, but I wasn't working. It was the day I was told I had to retire. I didn't have a choice. I didn't go out my way. It wasn't on my terms. But the funny thing about dark days is dark days always make the sun shine brighter. If you had bright sunlight every single day of your life, you're not going to appreciate it as much unless you know the other side of it. You always got to have the back to the front. So that was a tough question. It's a loaded question. We could probably do a whole show.
Do a whole show on that alone.
Just like that, talking about bad affecting calls. But I think what the crux of the question is there. Those are the times in your professional career when you felt most defeated.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what it is.
Yep.
Or like you said, it reverts back to the social media or the IG Live question. It's almost when you want to quit.
Yeah.
It's almost when, like, you say, what am I doing this for?
Yeah, it's a tough day. Stasia, thank you so much for sending that one in. Keep sending in your questions, and we will try to get them on the air. Now, you and I have had several different conversations. We were introduced by she's just taller than a leprechaun.
Yeah. Is there female leprechauns?
Leprecha? I don't know.
Leprechauness?
Today there is.
You don't know. You can't ask.
This little girl who's just about over, maybe, I don't even think she's over 5 foot.
I'd say
that's Amanda Coleman.
Yay high.
Yeah, she's yay high.
Yay high.
Whose voice will put you to sleep every single time. She should read bedtime stories. But she's a very sweet woman, and through her web of contacts, she's very giving. And listen, that's why we're always willing to promote anything that she puts out.
Let's give her a shout out, Irish Angel.
Amanda Coleman.
She's doing fantastic work. And unbelievable.
And she's coming back to Jersey. You're going to try to get together and
going to wrangle her in again.
Yeah, we're going to try. That white hair, you see it coming from a mile away.
A mile away.
Yeah. So, Tom, I'm a big fan of what you're doing now. I listen to your show, Gold Shield Show. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself? I know enough, so I don't need to.
Well, I did the 30 years in the NYPD. It's the only thing I ever wanted to do. My dad was an NYPD detective in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So,
where'd you grow up?
I was born in Inwood, up in Manhattan, Washington Heights, and then grew up basically in Rockland County.
Washington Heights, isn't that where John Sullivan was from?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, John Sullivan. I don't know if that name may have come across your desk once or twice,
or 3 times.
Yeah, he's doing good work now.
Yep. And then my dad retired in 1976. We moved up to Rockland County, but growing up, that's all I wanted to do. I would steal his shield off his dresser when he got home, put it on my belt, run around the house, acting like a detective and chasing my sisters around.
Did he have the big mustache with the lamb chops?
No, he was just like I said before, the biggest Irishman, Irish cop, quintessential one, white hair.
The prototypical
That was it.
Irish New York City.
You know-
Because they were all New York City cops were all Irish back
Oh
in the
yeah,
day.
back then, yep. His hands were pieces of meat, and he was just the best, my best friend, my hero, my mentor, everything to me. And that's what I wanted to be. You know, I've said it on other shows. I've said it to people I've spoken to. Once in our lives, we've always said, I want to be like my dad. And I actually got to do that.
Yeah.
You know,
You lived your life's dream.
Right. I got his shield, you know, when I got
cool.
promoted to detective, and his shield number was everything to him. His license plate, the lotto numbers, OTB, everything was 638. So I actually, for his 80th birthday, switched my original detective shield and got his.
That's cool.
That's real cool.
Yeah.
I know, you know, that's like a big thing with lineage cops.
Sure, you had to jump through hoops to do that too, didn't you?
You know, it was a funny story. When I first got promoted, I asked if it was available, and it wasn't. And once in a while, you can make a phone call to the guys who have it and explain to them why it's important. And a lot of times they'll give it up, and this guy wouldn't.
Pay a little vig.
Right? He just wouldn't. He just, no, I'm not giving it to you. You know, so he was a great guy. So I actually forgot about it. And later on in my career, I was in JTTF, and one of the guys that I worked with just mentioned it. He goes, "Hey, did you ever get your dad's shield?" So I said, "No, I actually didn't." He's like, "Well, why don't you call and see, maybe that guy retired and it's available now?" So that's exactly what I did. I called the shield desk down in 1PP, and I got the best woman in the world on the phone. Older lady who's probably been there forever. And I asked her if 638 was available, and she said, "Well, it's actually retired because we have so many detectives now, we're getting rid of the older numbers." So she says, very politely, "Can I ask you why?" So I said, "Well, it was my dad's shield. It was his life. It would be so great to have it." She goes, "All right, let me tell you what we're going to do. Get the chief to write a 49, which is a request. Have him sign it, bring it down to me. I'll put it back in service for you."
Oh,
That's
cool.
real cool.
Right. So I typed up the fastest
Right
report I
there.
did, ran down to the chief's office, and the chief was cool. You know, told him what it was. He signed it right there. I ran down to, so I get there. She's like, "You got here already?" Handed it to her, and she had it made in about 2 or 3 days, and I had it. And it just, like I said before, lined up with his 80th birthday. So I actually gave him the 49 as a present.
So what was his reaction when you got that
I was
shield?
going to say you had to be tearing up.
He cried.
Yeah.
I mean, we
Dude,
were
I'm
at-
almost crying listening to it.
Yeah, I mean, we were at a party at my sister's house down in Jersey for his 80th birthday, and no one knew. My wife knew. That was it. I didn't tell my sisters. No one knew what I was doing. So I just hand him an envelope, and everyone's kind of looking, and he starts reading it and starts crying. So my sister's like, "What the hell did you do?"
Did you tell me you have cancer or something?
And then, right. And then he read it. You know, he got through reading it, and that was it. And then I think I got it the next day.
Now, I want to ask this question because I grew up with some cops' kids. Cops' kids aren't always the moral compasses that you want to follow. Was that you? Or were you always hyper-focused on getting that job?
Hyper focused on getting the job.
Yeah.
I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I played sports. That was it. You know, I played baseball, basketball, and that was my life, and geared towards being a cop. You know,
what
and-
about college? Was college in it?
Well, I went to community college for a year and a half. Played baseball for a year and a half, and then what happened was I took the test in 1987. And thinking, all right out of high school, you know, right around the time I'm 19 and a half, 20 years old, you know, I'll get on. And David Dinkins was the mayor at the time and had 3 years of freezes.
Freezes, yeah.
So we didn't get hired till 1990. But no, the biggest thing with
Should have just
myself,
called Mike Dowd. He would have got you in. But we know, by the way, we know him.
he would have helped out.
Yeah, he would have helped out.
You put him down as a reference, right?
Instead
Did you get that one?
instead of starting at 20 grand, you would have probably started at 120 grand.
120 grand,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And had a pocket load of coke.
Yeah.
And a nice car.
Yeah.
But, you know, the biggest thing, and I have 4 older sisters, and the biggest thing was never to embarrass Dad, because Dad knew everybody. everyone in the NYPD.
That's good
in
and
New York
bad.
City.
Yeah.
Right. He knew everyone. So my sisters were older, did their thing, and lived most of their life in the city before we moved. I was 9 when we moved up to Rockland, and my sisters are older than me. And that was the biggest thing. Don't do any. And my sisters never got in trouble because the biggest thing was don't embarrass dad. Because whoever shows up to the scene is going to know who he is. So just don't do that. So we didn't.
And you would probably, back in that time, you would get some grace from whoever showed up, but you almost don't want it, because then if you got grace, that means you got a good deal with your old man.
That means the old man was called.
Yeah.
And
Right.
said, guess what your son did?
Right. And then you got to walk in the house.
I tell all the cops in my
When
town.
they're sitting there in a lounge.
I tell
his chair.
I tell all the cops in my town, you guys better hope you catch him before I do.
Right.
Yeah. You know, that's because that's the way that I grew up. But so you start taking tests what time?
We started taking tests in 87.
Yeah. And then what was it like the first time you got that letter saying, hey, you're accepted?
Oh, it was, we went through the hiring freezes, like I said. So you got crushed a couple of times. There was one time the class got canceled that I was going in the night before we were supposed to start.
Oh, that's tough.
Which at 10 o'clock at night, the phone rings.
Why?
Just budget stuff. We were all set. And this was kind of the maybe second or third time it was canceled. So we're like, okay, this is it. It's tomorrow. And back then, remember, we had 3 different departments.
Yeah.
So you had to get the letter to go down and find out what department you were in. Either transit housing,
Yeah, transit
or the PD,
housing, yeah.
which was more stressful than everything else because you wanted the PD. And the night before that, they canceled the class. So then you don't get jaded, but you get that next letter that, hey, go down, on Thursday, whenever it was. You're like, okay. And you're waiting for the phone to ring, and it didn't. And went down, got the PD, and it was so thrilling because, a lot of times in life, you don't get to live out a dream. You dream of something, a lot of times you don't get to do that. And I was lucky enough to do that.
I always said I had 2 dreams of my life. One to be a professional football player. I realized I was too slow and too short. And the other one was to be a cop. And I became a cop. I lived my life's dream.
Yeah. Yep.
Loved every day of it.
Makes it more special.
Yep.
I never, I'm a little bit different. I never had the dream to be a cop. I found being a cop.
Well, you wanted to be a car salesman, didn't you?
Yeah. Actually, no, I wanted to be a teacher. And when I got in,
you did that too.
when I went in and I realized that I really dislike other teachers. I didn't dislike the students. Everybody thinks I left teaching because of the students. No, I left teaching because of the other teachers. But
Backstory behind that is Kevin used to sell cars with my brother 25 years ago.
yeah, which is originally how I met Mike. Yeah, it's such a small world that the older you get, the smaller the world gets. It seems to be.
Yes.
Because you run into the people. Now, your father's world, by the time he passed, was probably ultra small because he just knew everybody.
Very much.
Now you get through the academy, and I'm sure you had a little prep from your old man about the academy.
Oh, yeah. I was actually, it was funny. He had me practicing fingerprinting with him. He had an old board, and he goes, listen, you're going to do this in the academy. Learn it now. And he taught me how to fingerprint. And do you believe the day they started doing the fingerprinting in the classroom, who gets picked to go up and demonstrate it? Me. So I go, okay. So my teacher, okay, here, try doing it. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. I bang it out. He's like, who the hell are you? I'm like, all right, let me explain. I told him about my dad. He goes, sit down. And he grabbed somebody else who couldn't do it.
Back in the day, we used to have to do 3 cards. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Take the finger, roll,
Yep.
roll. Now they go digital.
Yeah.
And it's just all.
And eventually in there, you'd get some ink on your hand and,
Oh, yeah. Then it was there all day because no one told you it was on.
Exactly. You go out on the road and you see like a little black mark somewhere and you're looking all around.
That's the cop's version of a kick me sign.
Right. Absolutely. Yep. Yes,
Look
it
at the
is.
jackass. It's kind of like when you leave a scene with your lights on for 15 blocks.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why I hated when we went to like the
LEDs?
LED lights because you couldn't hear them. The old rotating lights, you'd always know when they were on.
After a while, though, you'd hear the woo, 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 woo.
Or you're driving down the street and cars are just getting out of your way. You're like, hey, good to see you.
No, you know what you do? You hit the gas like you're going to a cause. And then as soon as you get out of sight, everybody, you just
Yeah,
shut.
turn down a block and turn the lights off real quick.
See, I know the city cops and rural cops are a little bit different because there's been times I pulled out, or I'm working midnights and I pull out of a street and I'm half asleep. And I pull out and I cut somebody off, flip on my lights and leave.
I've done that before.
It's one of the perks of being
I've done it. I've actually gotten called out on it too by a friend of mine's wife. She goes, you cut right in front of me. She goes, then you put your lights on. She goes, I know you weren't going anywhere. She goes, you just cut me off.
But stuff like that, you know, when you're young, you think it's a big deal. But when you're older, it's a little bit of humor that sort of breaks up the monotony.
Oh, yeah.
Because police work on a daily basis, aside from the moments of horror, is very monotonous. It's like Groundhog Day.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like, okay. I'm gonna go out
Patrol
there.
is repetitive.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, they're different calls, but it's still calls for service.
Yep.
You know, and it just becomes repetitive. As
Yep.
here we
And
go.
we had to deal with that even more, you know, in the early 90s when we had 3,000 homicides and 115,000 robberies.
Yeah, you got into when the city was
it was
bad.
out of control.
Yeah.
I mean, every night on the 4 to 12, it was someone was getting shot and killed. You were in a foot pursuit. You were in, you know, it was just constant.
Well, that's
so,
when they did away with stop and frisk too, right?
No, that's when it actually kicked in.
Is that when it kicked in? Yeah.
When in 1994, when Bratton brought his dream team in and changed the city and changed policing and changed everything.
What'd you think of Bratton, by the way?
Oh, I thought his first time around, I loved him because he came in with the attitude of, you know, enough of the BS. We have to change the city around. This is how we're doing it. And the team that he assembled, Louis Animone, John Timoney, you know, his dream team changed the entire city.
Well, the way policing was done, he was revolutionary.
Yeah, Jack Maples was the guy.
Because I've read his book, and as a matter of fact, you guys just had him on.
We had him on.
You had him on, yeah, which is super cool.
Yeah.
How did, like, the day-to-day police work that you did, were you still on patrol at that time?
Yes.
When he came?
Yep.
The day-to-day police work with the CompStat and stuff like that, how did that change the way you did business?
Well, you were a cop again. You know, you were able to be a cop. You know, back when I first got on in 1990, it was still kind of, all right, hey, don't rock the boat. Don't do this. Don't do A and B because of just things that were going on in the city.
Be seen, not heard.
Right. And then he came in and basically said, hey, go do your job. You know, and I've said it a number of times. There were so many reasons why it was effective. All right. One, he let the police do their job. He had City Hall backing him.
Yeah.
All right. And one of the most important things, which is the polar opposite of what's going on today, he had the DAs involved. And he had a strict agreement with the district attorney's office. If I'm going to allow my cops to go do their job, you damn well better keep these people in jail. Yeah. It's the only way this is going to work. It's the only way we're going to clean the city up is to keep the bad guys in. And then broken windows.
Well, who was the mayor at the time?
Giuliani.
Was Giuliani in there? Okay.
Giuliani brought Bratton back.
Yeah.
I thought I know he brought Carrick in, but I'm trying to think.
No, Giuliani brought in, Bratton was his first police commissioner.
Right.
Because Bratton was the chief of transit first, then left, went back to Boston for a couple of months.
And then went to L.A. from NYPD.
After NYPD.
And it was the other guy, Kelly, too, right?
Well, then Kelly was
Kelly was
twice also.
after, yeah.
Yeah.
But so when you got that job and you got out on the road, you have this built up in your mind since you were a little kid of what a cop is, what police work is. Was it what you expected?